More than 51% of online and on-chain interactions today come from unidentified, unaccountable bots. This, of course, is a huge challenge because how does my agent know that it's talking to your agent and not a bad actor or someone who is misrepresenting you? And so the KYA framework allows us to assign a unique identity to an instance of an AI agent that is then related verifiably to the party who deployed it and who controls it. And so we see your agent as a function of you.
Hello, I'm back. Today you see a lot of sunshine. I'm sitting at the sunny spot, but my parents didn't want their house to be shared. So this is what you get instead. And Evin is sitting in lovely Switzerland. Super happy to have you. Last time when we spoke, we talked about disco and backpacks. So, we need to map the whole journey to billions. So there's a lot to unpack.
Certainly. Well, Pete, always a pleasure to have the opportunity to hang out with you, my friend. Thank you so much for inviting me back to discuss further. Really excited to share more about our journey and where we're headed next.
Wonderful. So let's start super simple. So last time when we talked, you were carrying around a disco ball. We talked about the data backpack, which would have some credentials which you can use across the board. And then something happened, and was it a merger or acquisition? You became Privado, and now we are at billions. So just give us a quick rundown of what happened.
Certainly. Happy to share more of the exciting story of growth and expansion for this thesis of verifiable data. Perhaps to back up a little bit, my name is Evin McMullen. I am the co-founder and CEO of Billions Network, where we are on a mission to save the internet in the age of AI. When we last spoke, I had just begun my journey as an entrepreneur, building a small project called Disco, where, of course, you are the multifaceted center of the party and should be able to reflect your identity however you decide. I have been working at the intersection of verifiable data and on-chain technology now for nearly a decade. And there have been many peers and colleagues in the ecosystem throughout that time who I've had the opportunity to work with. Back in 2018, before I had even started my first company, I actually had occasion to come across some amazing researchers and developers who today are my teammates and colleagues. Though we have been, part of separate teams in our journey and careers, we have known one another for longer than our current form might reflect. So back in 2022, when I first started the Disco project, I was building a simple application that used your existing crypto keys to allow you to control more than just tokens, to also include units of data about yourself. And thus, I was sort of introducing the meme that you referred to of the data backpack, the importance of being able to carry around data about yourself from one application and experience to another, the same way that your tokens and on-chain assets can have that portability. So fortunately, the thesis and belief that was underlying Disco is something that has carried through and is even more mature and expansive today. After beginning to build the application layer of Disco, it became very evident that a more robust full stack solution was needed. Additionally, in order to handle more data than only data that's appropriate to be public, to include private personal data such as information about your location, your age, where you're from, and your traits and capabilities like KYC, it was important that such a tech stack or solution could include privacy-preserving technologies such as zero-knowledge proofs. And so in 2024, I had the privilege of meeting my now co-founders and colleagues who had built exactly that. The yin to our yang, if you will.
Nice.
The project then called Privado ID actually has a long history of development. So back in 2017, 2018, as I mentioned, I first encountered these amazing researchers and developers who created the backbone of identity and privacy preserving technology, first for the Ethereum ecosystem and now interoperable everywhere. The very core of that first project was called IDEN and then matured into one of the first ZK rollups called Hermez. Hermez was then acquired by Polygon, where my colleagues became co-founders of Polygon. And within the Polygon ecosystem, the identity protocols continued to be developed as an internal research practice called Polygon ID. But of course, your identity is not bound to any single protocol or blockchain. And so therefore, it was then appropriate when the technology became mature enough for it to spin out of Polygon to become its own standalone company called Privado ID. The word privado means private in Spanish, which many of my colleagues and teammates are actually from Spain originally. So Privado ID, the spin out of the long, matured and developed research practice of identity, then acquired Disco, combining our multi-chain capabilities and strength in application layer development with the history of Privado's ZK proving libraries, which are the most popular ZK libraries on Earth, as well as their deep expertise in protocol development and security. So together, we formed a new supergroup and realized also that, a brand appropriate for a global audience was needed. So one of the sort of unique surprises along the way is that the word privado is actually quite difficult for people from some regions of the world to pronounce. And so we found in our research that some people who spoke, call it the Queen's English, were accidentally understanding privado to be pronounced as privado. And this created significant confusion in the community. And so this, of course, is a great reminder for us all that continued research and understanding of global audiences is really important for a global protocol. So in the end of February, beginning of March at ETH Denver 2025, we introduced Billions Network to the world. Billions Network combines both strength in the application layer with native applications available in app stores everywhere, as well as a full stack of protocols, developer tools, ZK query, language, and more, making it easy to support now more than 1,000 integrations with governments, enterprises, and on-chain projects worldwide. We also, happy to jump into more of our development with Billions Network here in a moment, but that is the full and comprehensive history of our origin and how we got to now.
Can I ask a couple of questions just about how you got acquired by Privado? Was it like a difficult decision to actually join forces with Privado, or was it an obvious choice?
So, I think the privilege to join hands with some of the most accomplished and strongest engineers in our industry was not a difficult choice at all. It seemed evident that in order to grow and serve the vision for which I founded Disco, we needed strong partners who could complement the skill sets and expertise of our team in areas where we were not the market leaders, and we could do the same for them. And so, although we had been approached by a number of teams over time to join hands, this particular union seemed so well suited. Now, of course, the process of exploring not only technological alignment, but also personal values alignment is one that I would encourage all entrepreneurs to take seriously, slowly, and thoughtfully. So after spending quite a lot of time in person with my now co-founders and colleagues, discussing not only our existing tech stacks, but also our view of what we thought the future would bring, it seemed that we found alignment in many places that were essential. But I also am extremely grateful every single day for the constant, opportunity for us to question our assumptions, to be strong practitioners of product, constantly performing research to adjust to the world around us, as with the example of things as simple as our names or as complex as multi-chain interoperability and how we can make that possible using open standards. And so I think, today our team represents one of the longest tenured and most experienced in this field of secure verifiable data, but also one of the most energetic, curious, and open-minded.
Okay. Praise for the team. Got it. How big is the team then, right now?
We have about 30 people in the Billions Network team today.
And so is it fair to say that basically the Disco brand, Privado ID, it all became Billions, right now.
Certainly, Billions could not be where it is today without the precedent and contributions of both initiatives. And we carry the DNA and the underlying values of all of that history in our practice every single day.
Very nice. So you mentioned quite a number of partners. Was that carried over from Privado and Disco, or are these partners pretty much new when you started building Billions last year?
So we think it's extremely valuable for us to build long-term relationships with our partners. And so that's why we continue to support the relationships that began even as early as 2018 with some of these colleagues and collaborators. I also think it's a testament to the utility and function of our code libraries that they are so robust that we have been able to continuously support many of these partners through our different evolutions and growth.
Should I think about Billions Network more as a B2B thing or more B2C, or is it both? Because Disco had the part for a consumer, you could have your backpack and things, but there was a big part which you did for institutions. So how should I think about Billions?
So in the same way that you and I have identities, that every enterprise, government, and now AI agent in the world similarly have the need to verify and prove themselves, you can think about the Billions ecosystem as representing solutions for all of those different environments. We today continue to support work with government institutions, which continue to grow in number every passing month, as well as our ongoing work with enterprises, and even with individual startups and small teams that we can support. We today also, through the Billions application and SDK experience, have our own community of end users numbering more than 2.3 million. Who have onboarded and are utilizing our application experiences. And so if you have an Android or Apple device, you can download the Billions application right now and interact with it in that friendly manner. Additionally, we have also popularized a term over the last year, KYA, or Know Your Agent. I like to say we are expert in the ABCs, the KYA, KYB, and KYC, know your business, know your customer, and know your agent. And today, Billions Network is actually the largest ecosystem of verified AI agents anywhere on Earth. In fact, we as a protocol are the third largest community of on-chain agents, second only to Binance Smart Chain and Ethereum itself.
Okay, now that's impressive. So what does it mean that the agent is verified?
So that is a great question. Right now, of course, the concept of AI agents has been exploding with the ability for anyone to be able to spin up their own agent using friendly tools online. In fact, when we kind of take a step back and look at the internet as we know and love it, now you and I as human beings are in the minority of users of the internet. More than 51% of online and on-chain interactions today come from unidentified, unaccountable bots. This, of course, is a huge challenge because how does my agent know that it's talking to your agent and not a bad actor or someone who is misrepresenting you? And so the KYA framework allows us to assign a unique identity to an instance of an AI agent that is then related verifiably to the party who deployed it and who controls it. And so we see your agent as a function of you. Now, using this exact same identity technology that we're able to use to prove our own traits in a private manner, such as the fact that I'm a human and not a bot, I'm a unique person, I'm located in a certain place, I'm over a certain age and more. Now my AI agent is able to prove it is acting on behalf of an adult over the age of 18, or on behalf of an American citizen, or on behalf of a party who has passed KYC at a certain date. And so this, of course, helps us to address one of the fundamental missing layers of the internet. That is trust. And accountability requires identity. So without identities for our agents, we are blocked to be able to scale things such as agentic commerce. Of course, I know this sounds almost too simple, but I think it bears repeating that, we cannot be making payments at scale if we don't know who we are paying.
Yeah, sounds pretty much logical. So how does it work in practice? Say I have a couple of agents I want to ask them to go and do stuff on my behalf, and I would like them to be verified on Billions. What do I have to do? Or what do they have to do?
Well, we are very excited to welcome your agents into the world of verifiability to differentiate them from unidentified, unaccountable bots. And we realize that this process for folks such as yourself and builders around the world needs to be simple and easy and friendly. And so that's why we first began with translating our KYA framework from concept into practice in the form of an OpenClaw skill. So you may be familiar with ClawHub,
Sure.
a cheeky lobster-themed open source repository of capabilities that can be added to AI agents. ClawHub, of course, is kind of a call out or reference to GitHub, which is the platform that many use to manage their code. Today, our agent identity framework, our KYA tooling, represents the #1 skill on OpenClaw for identity. And so we have had the privilege of not only seeing agents encourage their own controllers to sign them up, but also have seen a lot of emergent feedback and interaction around this concept in platforms like Moltbook, which is a social platform that allows AI agents to interact with each other and to share data, to discuss topics together. And so through feedback from both agent users and human users, we are continuously refining these libraries.
Awesome. So now I have to come back to the app you mentioned, which anyone can download and use. So what can I do with the app?
So today, we have a few very unique aspects of the Billions application. Now, sort of as a precursor or something that I think it's important to note, of course, identity verification is not the end of your journey. No one wakes up in the morning to achieve their dreams of logging in. Identity, I like to say, identity isn't the thing, it's the thing that gets you to the thing. So it is a set of enabling traits and characteristics that can enrich other experiences. So for many users and their agents, Billions Network is the first step to a more personalized experience where they can reuse their identity credentials to prove their traits and capabilities. So if you were to download the Billions Network native application today, the way that you can onboard or interact can either start with your existing crypto wallet, or if you're not already a crypto user familiar with managing private keys, you can authenticate using a friendlier form, such as your email address and kind of social handles. Then once you're inside of the application, you construct a decentralized identifier in the background. Of course, we lovingly know these as data backpacks, but they are open standards from the World Wide Web Consortium. This is a form of data that is brought to us by the same good folks who brought us the internet. And so they've defined many open standards that are used in both legacy systems and in Web3 today. Part of the reason that this choice is really important for us is it allows that the data in Billions Network is interoperable across different blockchains, so that data doesn't get stuck on one blockchain and can't come to another, but it's also interoperable with legacy systems. We are integrated with more than 100 different government ID systems. And so one of the capabilities of our application that is very unique, and our team helped sort of lead the charge in terms of introducing this new capability to the world, is that you can take a government ID with an NFC chip, such as your passport. You can tap it to your phone, and then we are able to the application is able to securely retrieve the data from that NFC chip onto your device so that it is only under your control. We at Billions Network cannot see it. We are cryptographically prevented from interacting with it. And then the Billions application checks the signature on that data. One thing that your viewers may not be familiar with is actually that every single government that issues a passport with an NFC chip actually has their own public key that is published. So you check to make sure that the signature on that data indeed came from the correct passport office that you are representing in that information. So we're able to check the signature, make sure that it has not been, the data has not been corrupted or modified in any way. And then we are able to translate that into a verifiable credential, or a signed JSON file that sits on your mobile device, kind of like a digital version of that passport. Then, if you would like to prove traits in your passport, such as the fact that you're over the age of 18 without revealing your underlying birth date, we are able to use our Billions Network technology in that app to generate a zero knowledge proof on your phone or on your device based on the data in your passport and share that with an application, like a green light or a thumbs up saying Pete is of age or Pete is qualified to interact without revealing any of that underlying sensitive data. In addition to being able to interact with verified documents from different government issuers, we also allow for the fact that you can prove that you are a live human being and a unique human being. So all you have to do there is open the Billions Network application, which opens the camera on your device. You smile for the camera, and your beautiful face is then actually translated into a unique set of code that demonstrates that my proof is different than your proof, and therefore you and I are different and unique human beings. This forms the basis then of the agent identity we were talking about earlier, where we are able to prove that our agents are acting on our behalf, on behalf of a specific human being. This also, I think, has a really unique consequence in that we can create Sybil-resistant digital spaces that are occupied by both bots and humans. Previously, this was not possible because it was impossible to discern that an agent was representing a specific person or that multiple agents were also representing that particular person.
Okay, wow, interesting. So it's probably fair to say that you guys are trying to do something like I think it used to be called WorldCoin, now it's called only World, I guess, World Network, whatever.
So, we definitely have been flattered to see teams like WorldCoin use our libraries to work in pursuit of the goals that we've articulated. It's also been very cool to see, after we introduced KYA and we brought this framework to market, that they have taken their own spin on the challenge and followed us in that journey.
Yeah. They are very good in copying everything. But so then I verify myself. Is there do I have to do a regular check-in? Because I think I remember I was speaking with Victor. I think his project was called Human ID, something like that. But they were, very annoying in a sense that you had to re-verify almost every month that you are still human, which is kind of bizarre. Because once you are human, you are always human. But is there anything, I have to do regularly to actually keep my standing in Billions Network? Or I scan the thing on my passport once, and until the passport is valid, I'm good to go?
So, while I'm not familiar with the particular initiative you described, what I can tell you is that at Billions Network, we are very flexible in terms of the types of proofs you can generate. And also, we are attentive to the fact that other applications all have frequently very different requirements. For example, one application may prefer that you use a proof of unique human that is fresh, that is, let's say created within the last hour, so they can confirm that that particular person has received their proof within a specific period of time. There are other applications for which freshness of that data is not important, and they're happy to use a proof that is 2 years old. And so with Billions Network, we can accommodate the different requirements of verifiers so that based on the demands or needs of that application, it can be adjusted. I will also note that especially in cases of things such as proof of age, that can change over time. So if I am 17 years old and it's not yet my 18th birthday, obviously I am not over the age of 18. And so if I create an age proof that represents that I'm under the age of 18, and then my birthday passes, obviously that data is probably no longer relevant. And I'm going to want to create a new proof that reflects the fact that I have now turned over the age of 18. And so we think that flexibility is really important because, for example, if these proofs were immutable and could not expire, then no one under the age of 18 would ever be allowed to prove that their birthday has passed. And that, of course, would not be very accurate.
Yeah, very true. So I think A very obvious question is there's a lot of fragmented identities. If anyone who's watching this ever tried to live in different countries and they had to go through different legalization procedures in different, parts of the earth, it's obvious that we would all kind of love if there would be one app for it all and it would work. It's probably not the future which is going to happen. So do you guys have any preferred partners who are working on the same thing pretty much, or just parts of the identity and KYCs and the credentials which are sort of extending your network? Or do you think billions will be the network which will eat them all? How are you thinking about the spreading the technology so we can have easier lives?
I completely agree with you that it is not appropriate nor realistic for any one company to own a proprietary definition of what constitutes a human being. And that's why with Billions Network, we have chosen to build with open standards, unlike some of our peers and colleagues in the ecosystem that require proprietary hardware or use proprietary data, which means that other entities are not able to interpret that data and other entities are not able to contribute to a user's identity. The challenge here, of course, is that, and we firmly believe that every single human on earth should have the right and capability to represent their own identity and should not be subject to one party who can arbitrarily delete them from their centralized servers, which is true of many of our peers. And so that's just a very different way that we approach things versus some of our peers in the ecosystem. That's also why we see ourselves more as connective tissue that makes it easy for you to bring your data from one place to another. And our libraries are open source. This means that anyone can fork them and choose to extend and build on the network, which we've seen, in the scale of thousands of projects do so. And so, I don't have kids, but I imagine choosing a favorite partner is a lot like choosing a favorite child. And so I think I'll note that, my favorites are those who choose to build with us, to extend the capabilities of our existing identity systems across the world through our, now 100 plus different government identity integrations. And, my favorite partners are those who choose to focus on the utility for every single human being.
Very cool. Can you name some of the government partners which you have? For example, from Europe or Asia. Give me 2 or 3 names from every continent, if it's possible.
So unfortunately, due to our confidentiality agreements, It is not allowed for me to disclose all of that information. However, I can mention a couple that I think are really exciting. One in particular is our work with the European Commission, who we have a long-standing relationship with. We have been included in programs such as their second blockchain sandbox, where we have demonstrated proof of age using the exact method that we discussed earlier, allowing zero knowledge proofs to be accepted as evidence that a user is over a certain age. This, I think, is a very important and pressing topic around the world today. You may have seen that governments in places like Spain, the United Kingdom, Australia, and more have started to institute social media bans or restrictions for children under certain ages. I think it is vital that we create safe digital spaces and we prevent harm befalling children, but I am concerned that such agendas are being abusively and overreachingly promoted by entities like Meta that are using child safety as air cover for government surveillance, overreach, and overcollection of data. It is unconscionable that adult sovereignty and the rights of citizens be put to the wayside in favor of surveillance that pretends to protect children, but is in fact strengthening the overreach of private and public enterprise. And so I think that this tension was actually, I think, is illustrated in a recent video clip of Bill Gates that surfaced again. It was an interview that he did with the platform CNET, where he was talking about what I believe is a false dichotomy between total anonymity online and full disclosure of all identity data tied to every click that you and keystroke that you make in digital space. I think that such a dichotomy is wrong and irresponsible, and he knows it because Microsoft has contributed to the very open standards we talked about earlier. In fact, there is a middle path, a third way, where users are able to securely and verifiably prove their age without handing over the entirety of their government ID to a random website or every website that they visit, because many of these proposed pieces of legislation would require just that, would require websites intended for adult to collect the entirety of your passport or your driver's license or a similar document simply to allow you to visit the site. This creates many duplicate copies of your vital information stored in questionable ways that are not especially well regulated and can differ from one jurisdiction or state to another. And so this is also where our work, not only in providing technology, but also in advising and engaging with government leaders, is very important. I recently had the privilege to meet with Hester Pierce, who's an SEC commissioner, the Security and Exchange Commissions in the United States, where I'm from. And we discussed topics such as verifiable identity and agentic commerce, which requires accountability and security, like we've discussed before. So, I think many of the initial implementations of our libraries are very exciting, but it would be irresponsible for us as leaders and developers to not engage in the broader discussion around, how this impacts our fellow citizens and how this impacts the global digital experience that we all share, but is supported and regulated by many different government entities.
So thank you for the explanation. The question which came to mind is, obviously, the important part of any project which is focused on credentials and identity is longevity. So how do you guys make money? Will you be around in a decade?
So our team and our contributions as a group of individuals and a set of collaborators and colleagues has been around now for nearly a decade. So our objective certainly is to continue our presence and contributions well into the decades to come. We currently have several different streams of revenue based on different parts of our business. One, for example, is the on-chain usage and verifiability of our proofs of human and uniqueness. An example of how we work with other teams in this way is that we actually assist many projects in value distribution, making sure that tokens and rewards are received by the appropriate parties. In the early days of practices such as airdrops, it was extremely difficult to tell whether different crypto addresses that you wanted to distribute tokens to were humans and not bots, or were unique human beings. So that's why our work with teams such as Sentient, Lagrange, and more allows us to ensure that those teams are distributing value to the correct recipients as intended. Unique human beings who have provably contributed to their networks, and not swaths of AI agents that are unaccountable, maybe even from bad actors like North Korea. And so this is important not only in terms of capital distribution, value distribution, but also in terms of safety and compliance. And then, of course, in our work with institutions and governments, those relationships are a little bit more traditional and structured. I look forward to the day when our government partners are prepared to engage in programmatic agent-enabled on-chain payments using stable coins and other tokens. But I recognize that not every business and every government is ready for that kind of progressive setup. They still use banks, they still use application processes. And so we also, of course, are flexible to those needs as well.
Okay. So what's in the store for billions for 2026? Because basically any topic we talked about, all of them are exciting. Obviously, agents, obviously humans, obviously transferable KYC or identity. Pretty much all exciting topics, hard to put to practice, but really exciting. So what's the main focus and what are the next milestones?
So I think, as some of the examples that you've shared, continuing to scale the traction and add new capabilities to our agentic services and our agentic tech stack is definitely a core focus for our efforts moving forward. I like to describe our roadmap in 3 phases. First is the human and AI internet, where we need to distribute the basis or foundation of identities, our beloved data backpacks. And so through collaborating with partners and scaling with the integration of different data systems, we are currently in phase number 1 right now. Second, we need to introduce the reputation layer, incorporating different types of data, such as the ones that the growing list that I noted earlier, things like age and KYC, location, humanity, uniqueness, and more, as well as evolving those data types for the AI agents that represent humans. Then thirdly will be the phase of what we like to call the trust economy, or having more sophisticated multi-step workflows distributing value that is based on this reputation layer anchored in our identities.
Is there like a number which you would consider to be a success for 2026? I don't know, first 100 million agents certified, or first 100 million humans, or a billion?
You know, it is actually funny that you asked that, because my initial thought was at the beginning of this year, man, if we are able to become, one of the top 25 ecosystems of agents on chain, that would be a massive success for the year 2026. But now, already in the month of April, we are number 3. And we are second to Ethereum only by about 100 agents, which actually might even change by the time this podcast ends. And so I'm, very proud of the fantastic growth that we have thus far. And now I've got to revisit, what is my definition of success? I think in terms of scale and projections, I would really like to see our inclusion, not just necessarily in terms of number of agents, but rather in terms of the different communities that we connect. And so one of the missing pieces, I think, of the emerging agentic interaction and security space is that there is not a lot of connected tissue between different standards and different systems. We're also starting to see many different agentic protocols that solve a small portion of the supply chain of value exchange, but do not address the entirety of it. So as you noted earlier, with different types of identity, we're seeing this with agentic interactions as well. There are a lot of different fragmented pieces brought forth by colleagues in the ecosystem, such as Google or Stripe. However, I see the liminal spaces in between those prospective solutions as a great opportunity to improve these workflows and to add actual utility to our AI agents, more than just posting slop on Twitter. And so I definitely see that as an area of growth and opportunity. Certainly challenging, but nothing that we're not familiar with.
I was always advocating for like human-only network. I guess, if the agents will be certified, I'm totally okay with the agents being part of any social network, as long as they don't post slop. Yeah, that's the worst part.
I'm curious, Pete, do you create content with agents, or have you done that, or do you enjoy consuming AI created content?
So I have tried agents on Farcaster, on X. I didn't really like it. I'm a little bit old school in this. If I'm spending time on something which is called social network, I'm not there to hunt for number of interactions or anything. I just want to learn something interesting from someone. I don't use agents that much, simply because I like interacting with other people. So I am giving other people benefit of the doubt that, if they want to interact with me, it should be me, pretty much.
I couldn't agree with you more that if other people are trying to interact with Evin, they should be able to feel confidence in that. And I think this highlights the importance of what we've discussed thus far in our conversation, which is our ability to prove who we are online in a secure way. I definitely agree also that, we kind of have 3 different types of spaces on the internet now. One is, or we have the opportunity to curate, these three different types of spaces. One is human only. Another you could call mixed company of human actors and non-human actors. And then the third, places like Moltbook that are optimized for machine-to-machine interaction. However, we can only curate such spaces and have confidence in their accuracy if we have that layer of identity and verifiability.
So one question which comes to mind right now is how difficult it is to enforce credentials verification on bots. Is it like a difficult problem if we are going to use the Billions network, libraries, or is it something relatively simple? Can it be done as an overlay to my current sort of internet consumption, or do I need, I don't know, X to actually implement that for me? Like practical questions.
Yeah, that is an excellent question. And so that is also part of what has driven our roadmap, is feedback from our community and especially from our builders to understand what is the definition of difficult for them and what is the set of developer experiences and tools that would allow these new superpowers to be sufficiently accessible, but not unduly arduous and complicated to implement. And so this actually led to the development of what we call our ZK query language and the associated tooling around it. So let's say you have the Pete app. And the Pete app is only for users who hold a Czech passport. And so then you as a developer are actually able to use a friendly interface we've required that instead of having to write complicated zero-knowledge circuits and be an expert in cryptography, instead you can just choose from a simple drop-down menu. I would like my users to be over the age of 18. I would like my users to be from the Czech Republic. And then you simply click a button and we are able to produce the code that you can include in your application like a well-informed doorman who ensures that only the appropriate guests are able to visit and participate. And so it was actually out of that very question that we created these tools, because we realized that although our libraries are open source and friendly to those with deep expertise in things like cryptography, it actually could be a blocker to adoption or ease of use for those people who did not have similar expertise. And we're, constantly receiving feedback from our community about new ways that we can make these capabilities even easier and friendlier. And that's also how we ended up contributing to the OpenClaw skills.
Nice. Well, this was a wonderful conversation. We are almost at the end of time because I don't want to steal your whole afternoon in lovely Switzerland. So was there any question which, you wanted me to ask and I forgot?
Well, Pete, I always appreciate our conversations and your thoughtful questions. So I guess I would leave it at, if your listeners are interested in joining Billions Network, exploring and staying tuned with our latest developments, I would encourage them to follow us on X at billions_NTWK, to visit us at billions.network at our website, or to join our community on Discord. And so, we certainly welcome all of their questions, ideas, contributions, and feedback, and look forward to the next time that you and I have a chance to discuss.
Well, thank you very much, Evin. It was great, as always. And I wish all the possible luck to the Billions and to all of us for, verifiable credentials.
Well, thank you so much, sir. I hope you have an excellent rest of your day. Thanks for having me here, and we'll see you on chain.
Likewise. Thank you.